The name is Nat. Today we are looking at autism for old folks. Jokes is for anyone. However, we are going to be predominantly looking at people who maybe are like 30, 40s onwards, just because there is a big spike at the moment of people resonating, self-diagnosing, getting professional assessments. We're going to be looking, why is that? So it's good to have all of you. Today, we're purely looking at autism. We deliver webinars all the time. We've also just started a podcast called The Exceptional Podcast. The last one we did was on learning and development at the Dogs Trust, one of our partners that we work very heavily with. We've got Annie Swift, no relation to Taylor Swift, she says, but I'm hoping she will eventually give me tickets. I do recommend catching up. These have been really fun and interesting discussions. So do check them out if you're able to. What are we actually talking about today? We're going to be talking about getting diagnosed later or noticing the characteristics that we may have not noticed before, how it may affect someone a little bit different to what we may have previously imagined. We're going to be looking at lifelong support needs. Autism, just like the Dogs Trust, isn't just for Christmas, it's for life. We're going to be looking at mental health, well-being, how they intersect and intermingle. We're going to be looking at the social economic impact. Autism costing us more money, but also how it might affect our relationships. What do we even do in life once we've got our diagnosis? Do we go on holiday? Do we have an offshore account? I don't know. But autism doesn't just stop after the diagnosis. This is a new illustration I created, and it's essentially breaking down what we mean by ASD, the official diagnostic term for autism. Autism is, I want to say, a Greek word, and it means self-focused perception. It doesn't mean you're a narcissist, so you can stop that right now, bully from school. But what it means is that you are comfortable in your own skin or yourself, opposed to absorbing external factors and them can be overwhelmed. It's just a different focus. A spectrum is a relatively new idea. Didn't always used to be a thing. It just means we're not a cookie cutter mold. You can't fit us in a box. We're all very different. In many ways, the name of autism is a little bit redundant now in some ways because it means everything and anything. But also, it is a very useful term because it allows people to know that your intentions might not be the intentions that the other person picks up on. You might want to explain it in an alternative approach. And disorder, Debbie Downer, disorder simply means a deviation from the typical order. It doesn't have to be depressing. We can call it difference, condition, whatever you want to call it. It just means different from the perceived norm. Here is what we're talking about today. Some quick terms, just to make sure we're on the same page, because language is always changing. Tomato one day, tomato another day. I can't keep up with all the terms. Late DX is a cool way of saying diagnosis. Also, if you're running out of characters. But when we talk about it, we're typically talking about 40 up, to be honest. However, anything could be from teenager onwards, really, because autism is typically picked up on early on in life, as it is neurodevelopmental. As your body develops, it becomes more obvious whether you are or you aren't. We're also going to be looking post-burnout, because let's be real, if autism was all sunshine and rainbows, we probably wouldn't be bothering getting a diagnosis. But because burnout, drain, social overwhelm is actually a real thing, we typically get support when we're at an all-time low. Masking just means faking it. You pretend to be normal in order to fit in with the status quo. Burnout is when you mask for too long and the weight of the world gets a little bit too much for those delicate shoulders, because honestly, it gets enough for everyone. Hormones, these are the chemicals in our body that can shift and reveal traits. Essentially, it can fluctuate, which can make it easier or more difficult to manage some of the characteristics. Empathy gap does not mean we have no empathy. It means that it is a difference of empathy. Maybe it's a two-way thing. Neurotypicals, neurodivergent, we all can misinterpret people's different understanding. Advocacy essentially is championing. Plasticity is how the brain kind of moves, adapts, and rewires. Our brain is always developing. even if it gets a bit more rigid as we get older, it is always still growing. We're also going to be looking at some tools, routine, aids, anything that can help. Okay, I'm glad we are all up to speed now. Simon says, my diagnosis report was very clear and upsetting. Sorry to hear that, Simon. They pretty much are depressing. My one basically says I'm incompetent in every way, but actually it's only in a few ways. It framed it very clearly as a disorder. The report kept referring to how I behave versus how I should have, and accompanied by very judgmental and exacerbated descriptions. Simon, I'd be interesting to know, when were you diagnosed? The unsettling truth is you have to lay it on thick to get a diagnosis. The person who diagnosed you may have not seen you in that way, but unfortunately they may have thought, if I don't make you out to be completely incapable of basic life, then maybe you wouldn't get the support. I think it's an unfortunate reality that we find ourselves in, particularly with the health system. It essentially is, as a professional, you aren't matching up with what we consider to be healthy or normal. Yeah, up front, I wasn't a late diagnosis. I only found out I was autistic later on in life when I was going through my mum's paperwork, being a little scamp. I found my document and I was really depressed when I read it, to be honest, because it makes you think I'm broken. And it shouldn't be the case at all. Other people are sharing their similar experience as well. Trevor was diagnosed in November and only accepted it in the last couple of weeks, struggled with it for months. I don't blame you for struggling with it because, again, the way they write it is incredibly damning. Oh, sorry for your experience, Simon. It is blatantly discrimination. I think we need a complete overhaul in terms of how we diagnose people. Ultimately, it's meant to be helpful, not detrimental. Ronya says, I hope you are going to complain about the tone of the report, Simon. I think you need to raise this as a complaint. While I do agree, honestly, the strain to go through that system, I wouldn't blame you if you also didn't. You got to pick your battles. But I do think if you're able to, by all means. Tuesday says, I was diagnosed a year ago at 38. Is it because you're worried about what it may say or just haven't picked it up yet? Me says, I have been on the NHS autism assessment waiting list a long time and interested in people's experience of going via right to choose how it works. For those who do not know, choose is meant to be a little bit of a quicker approach because the NHS is completely gridlocked at the moment. Just so we're all on the same page, what is autism? Autism is lifelong. So let's really hit home the fact for all of you who got diagnosed this year, last year, a month ago, you didn't just pick it up at Lidl's. You've always had autism, but maybe it hasn't been obvious or you've been able to manage it for whatever reasons or haven't even had the support in place. While autism persists, the traits in terms of how it looks does change and evolve over time. And so does the type of support that you would gain. They say that autism is about 1 in 100. Some people say 1 in 50. I think the key thing is it's way more common than any of us realize. And a lot of us are finding out due to our children or more awareness. Why did you think now is the time to find out about it and to delve in a bit deeper? I'm using 50 as a number here, but to be honest, we've got people in their 30s, 40s, any age getting diagnosed. And I would like to know, why does autism persist? Why don't we outgrow it? I ask the same question every day about my allergies. Why haven't I grown them yet? The truth is, autism isn't like an allergy. Autism is about the brain's wiring. It's like your fingerprint. Why hasn't my fingerprint changed? It's part of who I am. When you have late support, it can block adaptions. What we mean here is that it's not that you can never get rid of autism, but when you're younger, your brain is a bit more malleable and fluid. You are more likely to come up with strategies that work. There's this competent model of autistic experience. Essentially, it comes down to cognition, how you think, psychological, your identity and how you react to the world around you, and ecological, the environment. All of these three things impact how autism relates to you. For instance, cognitively, maybe you did not demonstrate the characteristics that most people could attribute to autism. You may have been diagnosed later. Psychologically, you may be a really good masker, even notice that you're autistic. Ecologically, maybe you came from a background which didn't have as much money as other backgrounds and thus didn't have the support structures in place to get a diagnosis. You've got lots of different factors. And if you've got all of those going on, it's not surprising why you may have been diagnosed later. Jenny says, I had an extreme meltdown and burnout due to pre-menopause and hitting the mask. Do you know what, Jenny? We are going to be talking about menopause as well. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Trevor says, I had an ADHD assessment last year before, but felt there was something else going on. I think that's always like that niggling thing in the back of your head. Oh, Tuesday says, I don't want to read my report. It confirms I have ASD and that's what I needed. That is an interesting approach. For me, I think the curiosity in me would get the better of me, but considering what we've heard from other people, I get it. LaDonna says, what's funny is the same professional who implied I was too intelligent also said I couldn't have ADHD because I had a master's degree and therefore don't have executive functioning issues. I was later officially diagnosed with ADHD by another professional. Unfortunately, qualifications are not the same. When you look at people who get medical qualifications, the amount they have to learn is ridiculous. Yeah, not everyone is created equally, even if the way we assess them is similar. Oh, Blanca says, my son got his diagnosis since I've always said, okay, just like me, I felt I had no choice and I had to know for sure. I also got an ADHD diagnosis to top it off with. Do you know what, Blanca? That is a very common thing. I want to know, late diagnosed, who has one? When we say late diagnosis, let's say anything from late child onward, or we got pre-18 diagnosis. The last one is if you got diagnosed before 18, click that one. If you have a late diagnosis, click that one. If you have no diagnosis, click that one. Oh, Nicole was at 8. Again, Nicole, technically that would be a late diagnosis for those people. This little image here shows you why, because for instance, as an adult, we have developed a lot of the kind of kinks of adolescence. Our autism might predominantly be seen as positive traits. We're incredibly honest, really detailed orientated. We never give up. We can get our head into the papers. We can think outside of the box. These are all great things. But all the things that also come with autism, we've suppressed. But you can only suppress them for so long before the jack in the box, they pop out. Do not be surprised, like, why has it never been something that I needed to confront before? It makes a lot of sense why that is. But children, they haven't learned kind of basic life skills yet. They are not able to mask. Masking is a learned behavior. It's not something that kind of comes innate to us. Oh, new diagram. This is another good one. This shows you why autism can often be misidentified. Some of you might have been given another condition or diagnosis or disorder. And why is that? For instance, autism, there's lots of characteristics, okay? Like masking, shutdown, meltdown, whatever you want to call it, anxiety, having alternative social thinking, different types, different versions of empathy, sensory, being overstimulated, understimulated, and having diverging cognitive focus. These are all traits of autism. But you'll notice that while the green ones are all core features of autism, open and shut case, there are other characteristics of autism which are not unique to autism. For instance, your masking, anxiety, struggle with overwhelm might be the key characteristics to you, and thus you might get diagnosed with trauma, ADHD, or stress. It's what people look out for. People might be looking out for the key ones, but focus too much on the non-key ones. This can also impact gender differences because women are more likely to mask and mental health issues do tend to be higher, where these ones are more perceivable in boys. Yeah, misdiagnosis, it's a thing. And this is why if you think you are, there's no harm getting a second opinion, assuming that you're able to get one of those. Oh, Sarah says, I was diagnosed at 37 and only realized I'm autistic from the autistic lectures on my MSc course in clinical and developmental neuropsychology at BU. Normally you do pick up on that. I remember for many years, I always thought I got misdiagnosed. I'm not autistic. It's only when I started diving deep, I realized I am autistic, but the diagnosis they gave me, I think there's room for the interpretation in it anyway. When were you all born? Oh, our predominant decade is, 90s. Yeah, I'm also a 90s babe. But we also got quite a few in the 80s, 60s. Why do I want to know when you're born? So I can discriminate? No. because depending on what decade you were born in, it does play a part in how people see you and how you see yourself. For instance, someone who in maybe 90s or even newer might consider themselves autistic. Someone from prior 80s might consider them a person with autism. Terminology, understanding, it changes. Oh, thank you all for sharing. We've got some lovely 80 babies. When we actually think, what is autism? A lot of people want to know, where did it come from? Who are you? Essentially, it comes from parental factors. This could be difficulties in the pregnancy. It could be challenges in birth factors. Just so you know, I'm not saying this is the predominant thing. I'm saying it's a contributing factor. But the key thing about where autism comes from is when it comes to chromosomal changes. It's lots of very tiny, very common mutations built up. And this is why autism is not one thing, because these mutations can be all over the shop. Before you think, oh, mutations, it sounds a bit bad. Mutations is a perfectly normal, natural, and essential part of life on Earth. Don't listen to the X-Men. It doesn't have to be all bad or all good. And it also have hereditary. If your mum has it, you might have it, your uncle, your dad, it runs in the family. Autism can come from a few different places, but in terms of how it shows itself, it can look very different for very different people. Autism is not a one-size-fits-all. These things, they happen from very early, maybe even before you were born. But how it affects you, this is something that always changes and evolves. But yeah, autism does not go away, but there is an element of it which does change. Oh, Vicky says, my husband calls himself Captain Autism. Cool superhero name. If he comes across something that he finds either challenging due to not understanding a neurotypical way of thinking, or if he does something he's stereotypically autistic. Yeah, I like that. Embrace it. All right, now, for any of you who are over 50 or approaching 50, or just feel old before your time, I want you to do a little pin on any of these which you currently experience, because we are moving on to menopause and andropause. For those of you who never heard of andropause, it's like the male equivalent of menopause. Essentially, your brain going through changes, and you will typically experience some of these. For instance, forgetfulness, hot flushes, lack of focus. The ones in the middle happens to male and females. The ones on the left, just for the women. The ones on the right, just for the men. Oh, you can only select one, but they're all happening to you, Vicky. Oh, sorry. But yeah, you can only select one. The idea is to get a view. Why is this important? The key thing is, why is it only now I'm needing support, help, or investigating whether or not I may or may not be autistic? It's because there are big changes going on. If you are depressed, if you have headaches, essentially, imagine trying to act and mask and fit into the normal world when you've got all of this baggage going on. You're not going to be able to do it as effectively as you could do before. You are at higher risk of burnout, and then you are more likely to look at contributing factors such as autism. Sam says, I had early menopause at 43 due to chemotherapy treatment for cancer. Sorry to hear that, Sam. I have all symptoms on the figure of the woman except the hot flashes and irregular periods as they stop. Thanks, Sam. I think that's really interesting because there could be so many different factors to play in here, and something could completely throw doctors off. And quite often they are looking for the stereotypical answers, but there's co-occurrence, comorbidity, which really throws people off the scent. I want to know, for any of you who have gone through menopause or andropause, did your autistic characteristics get worse? Did they stay the same? Or did they get better? Oh dear. Got worse. It comes to cognitive overload. When you are balancing all these different changes, it gets heavy. Then unfortunately, the masking is normally the first thing to collapse. I think masking isn't inherently bad. I think we do it as human beings, but it's when you overmask that it does have more of a cognitive draining effect. If it gets worse, do know there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. This is actually a completely natural way. It's your body saying, hey, you've got a lot on your plate right now. Something has to give. Typically, it's the things which are not needed. We don't need to mask. We choose to mask because the way that society discriminates and disclose. I suppose I should just clarify, when I say you don't need to, but it's not like a biological necessity in terms of autistic masking. However, you could argue it is a social necessity given the world we live in. Take that with a pinch of salt. Don't worry, if you can't answer, it's completely fine on these. We've got a diverse audience here. Anyone who would consider yourself midlife up, I would love to know, have there been any changes besides thinking, getting diagnosed, or unmasking with your autism? Because these are all things we need to consider in terms of why we are more likely to burn out, and thus characteristics of autism, which normally don't hinder us to show up. A great example is Daryl Hannah, who is autistic and talks quite openly about it. Everyone, it's okay. Age is but a number. All right, burnout, executive function problems, all of this has happened to me since hyperectomy at 32. I need to look into that. Can't even read it, but I know what you mean. Executive functioning diminished. Yep, if things do slow up a bit. I've been told I've become more autistic since being assessed. No, I think you're just more aware of it, to be honest. Probably now people know you're autistic, they are actively looking for autistic signs. Or maybe you no longer feel you need to mask. Fatigue, reduced sociability. Honestly, I think that's just a fact of getting older. I can't hang out with people these days. I do it every now and then. I don't need it. There are some things which are autistic related, and there are other things that just so happen. All of the above, shut down because of high pitch sounds. Yep. Interestingly though, your ears do end up hearing less. Have any of you had these sounds which you put on the grass to scare your cats away, or the teenagers? Because only people of certain ages can hear certain sounds. Yet autistic people sometimes have more sensitivity. I remember into my late teens walking past those things I'm going to scare cats away. I'm like, so we are all different. Since having autoimmune disease, I have all the symptoms connected to ND. Yep, they have to connect. Fatigue, difficulties, increased rigid thoughts and routines. Yet we have a pattern for consistency. That is something that I've definitely noticed myself. Look, let's get AI to do some magic sorting. Fatigue, sensory issues, executive functions, routines. Sam says, I think everything came to the forefront after my cancer treatment, as I was fatigued and burnt out from that. My hormones were out of whack, and I think I was so tired from masking. I became so aware of things. The years of depression and therapy, it didn't help because I was actually autistic. Sam, it sucks you had to go through that. It does sound completely expected though, because again, masking is, I don't know if this is a clumsy way of putting it, a bit of a luxury. Whereas when you're going through cancer and other kind of traumatic experiences, your body is in absolute defense mode and it is trying to save any resources it can possibly save. It doesn't make it okay, but it does make sense. Oh, Vicky says, at 48, I can still hear much higher pitched sounds than many. We brought a cat scarer thing. My next door cats were using our garden as a litter tray, and we had to get rid of it after 2 days, as that's all you could hear. I hear something near my house. I cannot tell you what it is. I don't hear anything. And I'm like, it's driving me crazy. Why do people typically get missed for diagnosis? As we know, there is good old fashioned bias. Male behavior is more likely to match the stereotypical criteria of what is considered ASD. Camouflaging, basically a form of masking. It is more common in women and people or who are LGBTQ+, and people of color. Any minority or non-male, you are more likely to have to act white in order to get by in life. Mislabeling, things like autism, OCD, also have core characteristics that overlap with autism. As autism gets diagnosed less in adulthood, the chances of a misdiagnosis goes up, up, and up. Depending when you were born, you might just be considered a bit of an oddball, a bit quirky. Yet when you're younger, like, oh yeah, it could be autism. It depends on when you were born. There's so many different things to take into consideration. All right. I hope you're ready for some kind of new idea, because maybe some of you haven't heard of this before. I know I hadn't before doing this originally. The female protective effect explains why males are more likely to be diagnosed with autism. I'm just going to take a guess. I'm looking at the chat here, just judging by names alone. we've got more women in the chat than we do males. And that's probably because you're more inquisitive when it comes to seeking out answers for things that haven't been explained to you prior. Female protective effects essentially means you need more traits of autism and genetic identifiers for a diagnosis, the threshold for you to get diagnosed. Maybe as you and a male counterpart, the male would need less characteristics and observable differences compared to you in order to have a diagnosis. This is predominantly because women or girls tend to develop faster than boys and are more likely to develop masking strategies much earlier on. When you compare apples to oranges, boys to girls, the boys seem like they need far more support. Women or girls typically are more likely to demonstrate introverted tendencies. I'm not saying it's because women are more likely to be introverted, but what I am saying is they are more likely to show introversion. I think that is very much a, not just Western, actually Eastern thing, where the kind of shy, dormant, I wouldn't say boo to a goose girl is considered a proper way of being. Obviously, that's BS. Interests seem typical. So if a little boy likes trains, autistic. If a girl reading gossip magazines, playing with dolls or whatever, that's normal. Let's not even worry about that. Again, it's different from what we consider normal and not normal. Experts typically do not have the experience for diagnosing people who do not meet the kind of status quo or what the good old book says. This image here shows you that on the left, we've got the population. As you can see, population goes up and then it goes down. And we've got the number of related autistic traits. For instance, everyone on the planet, we all have autistic traits because they are not unique to autism. A few more autistic traits. Here, we've got the most amount of people who have the average amount of autistic traits. But it's not until we get over here where there's less people and the males meet the threshold for an autistic diagnosis before the females. Essentially, you have to have a lot more traits and it's a lot less amount of the population who eventually get a diagnosis. This is genuinely quite shocking, but it's something that you can research in academic papers and has been heavily researched. Old Tuesday says, I collected Barbie dolls as a child. I had 30 plus, but it was seen as normal because I was just a girl playing with dolls. That is the exact example we're looking for. I went to the Barbie Museum. It was great fun, but now we're going off on a tangent. There was never anything typical about my interests. Say no more. Jeannie says therapy and undiagnosed alexithymia made me realize something was different as well. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. I really appreciate it. Let's go back to the menopause now. And this is about estrogen levels. Number one, traits may rise, overload and mood swings. Throughout our life, we have different levels of estrogen, whatever you want to call it. After 30, it starts to go down. As it goes down, our body basically finds it more challenging to deal with dysregulation, such as overload, mood swings. GPs often contribute this to anxiety, low mood, or just hormones. Unfortunately, there isn't much research on older autistic women, and particularly trans folk, because they don't fit neatly into the two boxes that we've created. So it's definitely something that I would say you don't need to be an expert in all of this, but when you go to your GP, if you ever need to, do say, have you took this into consideration? Because we're all fallible. None of us are perfect and things do get missed. Jocelyn says, I love horses. And so did all the other gals, but I read about them. Yep. Great example. You might be into things that every other person your age and gender is into, but males, for instance, are considered a bit odd. I collected sticks and rocks. That's a bit odd. Autistic. You like horses. Nothing weird about that. Really great examples. Let's go down memory lane, okay? The history is the good old 60s. The time of the Beatles. How I would have loved to have been alive back then purely for that journey. Nowadays, we just get the movie adaptations with some random people that don't even look like the Beatles. But that's a chat for another day. In 1968, the DSM-2 the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, predominantly used in the US by the American Psychiatric Association, called it childhood schizophrenia, not autism. Only for children much related to schizophrenia. We're seen as rare, 1 in a million, they say. And it was an institutional problem. Let's face it, it's your mum's fault. It's those darn refrigerator mothers. Yeah. Also, being gay is a mental disorder in this volume. But again, sorry for another day. There is no idea of a spectrum. You're either schizophrenic, childhood schizophrenic, or you're not. There's no spectrum. There's no wiggle room. In the late 70s, we are starting to do research. However, adults do not get a look in. This stays very much for children for a considerable amount of time. If we look at the ICD, that is the more like European or the UK way of looking at diagnostic labels. You'll notice that, okay, it's only until the 90s where autism can actually be for anyone, not just for children. It's only very recently where it was a spectrum. FYI, it's not schizophrenia. It's also not rare. It is, however, poorly understood. Yep, it's not just for children, and there is no way to get a diagnosis if you're an adult, and even if you're a child, schools are very much unprepared. Let's face it, if we look at the demographic that we got today here, maybe some of you were 70s or early 80s. I don't want to say it's not a surprise, but you can see why it might have taken so long to get to where you've gotten to today. April says she wasn't sure if the Beatles film was a joke for April Fools. We were all praying for it to be an April Fool's joke, April. We really were. I hope it will be good. When were you diagnosed/suspected? This is going to be an interesting one, particularly for today. All you need to do is put a little thing in terms of when you either were diagnosed or suspected. While you are doing that, let me explain how you even go about getting a diagnosis. Because it's not so much about do you have autism, it's more about do you not have XYZ before we look at it. Here, first of all, do you have social difficulties? If you don't, not autism. But do you also have repetitive behavior? Do you also have early traits? Oh, interesting. See, that is part of the diagnostic criteria. Also, does it impact daily life? You can have autism, but if it doesn't impact you, no diagnosis needed. And the most important one, do you have any other conditions which may explain any of the prior attributes? If nothing else explains it, then you have ASD. You can see how many people today resonate with being ADHD, having ADHD and autism. But that doesn't quite align with this, because if ADHD could be the reason for all of the prior, then it would be autism. If anxiety would explain these, then it would be autism. You can see how we need an updated way of diagnosing, because the current way is very limiting for a condition. Let's go back again, life before autism diagnosis, or understanding at least. Why was it difficult? Why was it easy? Was life better before you knew all the ins and the outs? Or was it difficult, like Simon, for yourself? Because of how challenging it was for you, do you think it would have been better not to know? Or are you actually still glad you went ahead with it? I know, tough questions, I'm sorry. I'm hoping today might help you look at it from a different perspective, because you've got the historical context, you've got people's own mistakes, the system. There's lots of things to take in consideration. That document is not a reflection on you 100%. There's a lot of other things that go into it, which makes it so negative. Oh, Trevor says, glad, interesting. Nicole says, is Cher autistic? They've actually got dyslexia and dyscalculia. However, they do have some autistic traits. And I put them up here because I think it's interesting when we look at, is it always beneficial to retrospectively diagnose the previous you for acting in certain ways? Oh, Trevor says, I got to meet you guys. If it wasn't autistic, I wouldn't have. Stop it. Nicole says, no support at school. What else have we got here? I didn't realize how much I did was impacted. So much makes sense now, but without the knowledge, it would have helped me. Thoughts of as intense, controlling, etc. Very hard on myself, anxious at the time, feeling misunderstood. Before I knew, I was trying to just be better, struggling with romantic relationships, had to retire for medical reasons, consistent fighting with society. I'm seeing a lot of friction here. Multiple burnouts, first at 16. We've got a lot of friction. and maybe a lot of self-doubt. I've briefly asked this, but I would like to go in a bit more detail. Why were you even interested in getting a diagnosis? Because let's face it, it takes forever. It can be a bit negative. They're really expensive, but maybe there was something that made you think, you know what, I need this. If you're wondering, Sir Anthony Hopkins actually is autistic, unlike Cher for sure. And he has very much used his autism as an advantage. And you can see that in how he acts. He takes a very particular type of role. Vicky says, I know quite a few people who have been late diagnosed and have all said that they found it helpful in explaining. Yeah, it justifies your life in a way. It gives it context and it can relieve some of that stigma or burden you might have put on yourself. I want to know what is wrong with me for sure. Hopefully by doing this for sure, you realize there is nothing wrong with you. Validation, even if it's self-validation. I wanted to be able to understand myself and hopefully get more support to answer all the whys of my life. You'll notice it's very different. If you ask people why they want a diagnosis when they're children, or the parents why they would get their children diagnosed, it's to gain support. But as adults, it's typically for validation and understanding. I think the reason why you get diagnosed does change over time. Some of the things we mentioned, including understanding lifelong traits. You've always been this way, but you want to understand why. You want to heal from the trauma of being mislabeled, dumb, stupid, schizophrenic, anxiety, depression. You knew they weren't right, and now you want answers. You want to have a community, people you can relate to, and having an official diagnosis can get rid of that imposter syndrome. You want to learn. You want to unlearn things that you thought were true, and you want to be part of a community. Also, maybe that you've seen similar characteristics in family members and you want to understand that pattern. Many reasons why you would seek a diagnosis later in life. A classic example is good old Susan Boyle from Britain's Got Talent. I Dreamt a Dream. She says, I don't feel very gifted. I feel different. And I think this is where I am at this journey now. I don't feel like I've got a superpower, but I also feel that I don't have a disadvantage. It's just different. As the world becomes arguably more inclusive, even though we're going on a bit of a dip at the moment, you do start to see difference being utilized. But again, the jury's still out in terms of how our current times will fare. If you're in the UK, see the GP, go to the NHS. I'm not going to lie to you, horrifically long waiting time, but you might as well just on a list, and you can always say no later down the line if you choose that it's not right for you. Go private if you can afford it, but do know that not all private clinics are equally as good as each other, so do your research. You might say, actually, I don't need official bit of paper to know that I'm a bit different. You might just go straight to support. You could have an occupational therapist. You could have cognitive behavioral therapy that has been autistically designed, because typically it doesn't always work for people like us. You might want to find groups and communities. There are lots online. There's London Autism Group, different National Autism Society groups and collectives. There's this community for one. You can get access to work, different grants and adjustments. There is support available. I'll tell you what, the vast majority of it doesn't need a diagnosis. But that imposter feeling is a justified feeling. And that's why you might want to go down that exploratory route. Other things that if you believe you have autism or are autistic that can help people is different tools like calendars or having sensory suppressants. There's things like Brain FM, which plays sensory music, which some people find comforting. I personally like the ocean. Different things like AI or Copilot, Otter. There are a billion one tools. And yes, some of these do look very dyslexic focused, but as it all interweaves, there isn't as many tools for autism just because of the nature of autism. But I will say a lot of these things can be given for free. Before we wrap up for the day, I'd love to know from your own perspectives, are there any other support options that you have find beneficial in helping you navigate the world or understand yourself better with autism? April says, I like listening to the ambient chill playlist on Spotify. I do find that music's really comforting, like rain in a rainforest. Beautiful. Oh, thanks, Dylan. I appreciate that. I think counseling, particularly autism focus, can be really helpful. He says, where can we find therapists dedicated to support? We actually do support for autism, but maybe not therapeutic support. Do your research online for certain and be okay with swapping people if the person you're seeing isn't right for you. All right, we've got podcasts and audio. Nice. I love a good podcast. Access to work. Yep, really great. Assuming that they hurry up. Disabled students allowance. Absolutely. If you're entitled to it, gain it. Local autism support groups, therapy with someone that knows about autism. Love it. Information on the internet. Take it with a pinch of salt, but it's definitely a good starting point. We've got lots of great options here and I really appreciate it. If you do want to do some further reading, a book I'd recommend is called Divergent Minds by Jenara. It's about thriving in a world that isn't designed for you. And I find this is particularly good for adults because it helps reframe the challenges which you have always considered a you problem rather than a societal problem. If you do think, I'd love to dive in a little bit deeper, all of our research on these webinars is academically sourced. If you do want a workplace needs assessment, which doesn't require any diagnosis, you just have to resonate, get in contact with us because that's our bread and butter. It can be done via government grants or it can be done privately, depending how quick you want it. Here's our YouTube channel where you can like and subscribe and catch up on previous webinars that we have done if you found today of interest. As always, you have been a fantastic group and I've really enjoyed all your opinions today. Thanks very much.